Hi all, I'm Trisha Peach, host of the Peach Buzz. I'm back from Florida. I've been traveling quite a bit, having a lot of fun. And I had a question quite a bit this weekend at CPC, and also when I was doing a kids ministry training event here in central Wisconsin. I get the question, how do I get a book published? That's what they ask. I am the author of Your Children's Ministry from Scratch. Also, I've got Your Children's Ministry Beyond Basics, which is on Amazon, and this is a kids ministry musical I wrote called Finding Hope. This one is on ministry to special needs kids, ministry during tragedy, helping families that are going through divorce, musicals, VBSs, things like that. When I wrote my first book, I had been a children's pastor at that point for almost 20 years, full-time on staff. I'd always known that I wanted to write a book. I knew I wanted it to be on children's ministry. And I realized after quite a bit of time that the same children's ministry principles that were working for me where I was at seemed to work no matter where I visited. Our church was very large, yes. We had a church of 3,000. The kids ministry started at 300, grew to 600 in a short amount of time. The volunteers went from 100 to 276, again, in a short amount of time. However, I noticed that in our site churches, with quite a few site churches, and even startup churches, or we'd go help with a reboot of a church downtown, no matter the size of the church, a lot of the same children's ministries principles applied. So I thought, I want to write a how-to book on how to launch or relaunch a children's ministry from scratch. Like with you walk in, you don't know how to set up a budget or volunteers, and you have nothing to start with. You just have to start from the ground up. And I did, and I had no idea what I was doing. You know what they say, you don't know what you don't know. I had no idea how to write a book. I loved writing kids curriculum at that point, but I'd never tried to write a book. I thought, okay, I'm going to write this book and just see what happens. And I thought, if I write this first book and it doesn't take off, and I fall flat on my face, I'm going to pick myself up, I'm going to learn, and then I'll try again. I'll learn from my mistakes and I'll try again. So I was writing my book, and I realized the first part of this was way too long, so I split it into two books. So the first one, Your Children's Ministry from Scratch, and the second one, Your Children's Ministry Beyond Basics. So then I thought, yay, I have finished, and oh boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. So backing up a little bit, if we're talking about you want to get a book published, let's just say you want to get a book published. There is nothing wrong with that. It is great to share information with the rest of the world. You're making a contribution that may be around after you're gone. And God might be laying that on your heart as a tool for other people. So let's talk about how can you make that a reality? How can you get your book published? Now, I am in a niche market. I work with kids ministry, family ministry almost exclusively. So I would not be an expert on, say, fiction, going that route. So mine is a how-to book, and it is nonfiction. All three of my books are, and then the fourth, of course, is a musical. How do you get that published? Let's say you're in Christian ministry and you'd like to do something like that. Well, this may sound obvious, but the number one biggest hurdle that you're going to have is you need to write the book. That's the thing. And you say, well, duh. I would say the numbers are, last I checked, it was something like 85% of people that want to publish a book never finish the book. So if you don't finish the book, obviously you can't publish it. That's not going to happen. And I think people are waiting for more of a traditional publishing situation like it was many years ago, that you would pitch your idea and a big company would then pay you to write the book and pay you for all of your expenses. Maybe that still happens, but I don't see that. I have not seen that. usually you finish the book first. You finish the book. Now, if you're big name like J.K. Rowling or John Grisham, or in our world, Kids Mystery Jim Weideman, that probably different. But for me, I needed to finish the book first, and that is where most authors end up dropping out, because they don't ever finish the book. So your first focus needs to be on finishing that book. I think you have to ask yourself, who is my audience? Who am I trying to reach here? What am I trying to do with this? Would be a second thing. 3 would be, how am I giving them a tool that they can use? There has to be some kind of a benefit that your readers get from reading that book. And if you can't give me that, if you can't tell me, this is who my audience is, this is what I'm here to say, this is the benefit they're going to receive from having this book, then you're probably not ready to sit down and write it yet. You need to think of those 3 things first. Who is your audience? What are you trying to answer? What is the problem you're trying to address? And 3, what benefit are they going to get from reading your book? So if you answer those 3 questions, then it's a good time to get started. The next thing you need to do is write an outline. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5. And that for me helped tremendously, because I knew where I was going with the book, and I could measure how much time was going to be spent on each chapter, how much I was going to pour into each part. And I realized it's too long. I need to split it into 2. Okay. So you start by answering those 3 questions. You write your outline. Now the outline, you're just figuring out where you're going with it. What are you putting in Chapter 1? What are you putting in Chapter 2? What are you putting in Chapter 3? And you can go into more detail after that, but your outline is the basis for everything else you're going to do. Nobody's going to get on a bus where they don't know where it's going. So you need to know where you're going with the book. And you see my 2 puppers have arrived to say hi. That's Ursani and Sam. These are my 2 doggos. Anyway, you need to have steps. So for me, this is just me, I decided I'm going to write 2 pages a day and give myself 1 day off a week. So and yes, there were days I was sick, but then I would try to make it up the next day. It was baby steps, 2 pages a day, 2 pages a day, 2 pages a day. Not, I'm going to write this whole thing in 1 weekend. I think the best way I can say this is, writing your book is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And those of us in ministry that are sprinters, it's going to challenge you, because you're going to want to give up. Usually people pour into that book in the first chapter. They just dive in, and then they lose their excitement and they just kind of quit. And they'll say, well, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. Well, you're going to have to finish the book. And it's a lot of self-discipline. It's baby steps. It's a little bit every single day, and following your outline. And sure, you can change the outline, but you need to know where you're going with it. Now, last but not least, for this part of it, because I think I'm going to split this into 2 parts. The next thing I would tell you would be, you need to hold yourself accountable. Even if you are typically a very disciplined person, life happens, things jump in, you don't know what's going to happen. I would say, get an accountability partner. What really helped me is, I had some good friends, and I'd say, hey, in 2 weeks, can you check on me and see how far I am on this book? And I also said, you know what, in 2 weeks, I'm going to mail you the first chapter. I'm going to email you the first chapter. That gave me some accountability. I do better with deadlines, and if I don't have deadlines, I'm going to need to create them. I'm going to have to create sound, responsible, sensible deadlines in order to get things done. So for me, I made sure somebody was going to need to have that chapter from me at a certain point. And I needed people to be saying, hey, where is that? You were supposed to, and I usually had it to them by the deadline, but I had to have that deadline. Okay, I'm a mom, I have kids, I have ministry life, travel, all these other things are happening. If you don't have those deadlines in there, the pressure of the imminent. You're going to go for whatever, you're going to be putting out fires for whatever else you've got going on. You're going to have accountability in there. You're going to have to create your own accountability. So just to recap, number one, you're going to have to answer those questions, those 3 questions before you even get started. Who is your audience? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And 3, what is the benefit your readers are going to get out of your book? 2, write that outline. Make it as detailed as you can. Write that outline. Get it done. 3, you have to start. You just have to get started. Don't make excuses. At some point, you have to get started. You just have to start writing. And 4, or under 3 is you got to break it into baby steps. Do 2 pages a day or whatever works for you. 1 page a day or 1 good paragraph a day or whatever works for you. Break it down into bite-sized pieces. And 4, extremely important, accountability. Who's going to be your accountability partner to make sure you do this? So this half, I've been talking about how to actually get the book written. In part 2 next week, I'm going to talk about different ways of getting it published. Okay, that's a whole nother ball game of getting that book actually published. I would say half of the war is getting the book written. The other half is getting it into the hands of people. So we'll talk about that next week. Good luck on your book. If God's laying one on your heart, don't give up. Here, those are some good tips to get you started. Okay, that I hope will get you started this week. If you have any questions, comments, please comment down below and I'll do the best I can to answer. But this week was on starting on your book. Next week we'll talk about getting that book out there. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you next week on the Peach Buzz. Bye.